As God's people, oftentimes we wrestle with disappointment. And I want to read a definition of disappointment real quick to us that I think is very appropriate because there's a belief out there and there's teaching out there that when we walk with God, everything goes the way that we want it to, and that as long as we do what God requires of us, we will not face certain things and have to deal with certain challenges in life. And that could not be further from the truth. That could not be further from the truth. And I want to read this. It says, disappointment is sadness or displeasure caused by the non fulfillment of one's hopes or expectations. It is sadness or displeasure caused by the non fulfillment of one's hopes or expectations. That disappointment, that as long as we live, somewhere, something, somehow, we're going to find ourselves wrestling and struggling with disappointment, whether it be disappointment in others, because y'all, let's just be honest, folk gonna let you down. Folk gonna let you down. Disappointed in ourselves, and reason we become disappointed in ourselves because folk gonna let you down. We human beings, people, friends, families, spouses, children, parents, loved ones, co-workers, supervisors, employees are going to let you down. Anyone that is a living, breathing soul that is wrapped up in flesh as we are, that is walking this earth, anyone, all of us have the potential to cause someone else to be disappointed. All of us. We're going to face disappointment. There are going to be some expectations, some needs, some dreams, whatever. There's going to be disappointment in people, and there's going to be disappointment in situations. There are things in our life that we had hoped would go a certain way, and quite frankly, they have not. We thought that we would be, and I hear about this whole 5 year plan that people have, and I tried that 5 year plan. Uh, and I get it. For some people, it works. For some things, it whatever. We're going to face disappointment in some shape, form, or fashion. We're going to face disappointment. And the psalmist in Psalm 73, that was one of the things he was wrestling with. Our disappointment can be made the worse when somebody else's situation that is better than ours is highlighted. When somebody else who is um, getting by, whether it's good, whether it's something that we want, and I'm not always saying that in an envious way. There are some things, you all, that we truly, genuinely desire, but in our and it's not that we are hating, it's not that we're envious, it's not that we wish ill on someone, but our disappointment can be so heavy, our disappointment can be so great that it causes us to retreat. It governs and shapes our thinking and our faith. That we will, as believers, we wrestle with the disappointment. It's going to show up. It's part of the human condition, it's part of our life. But we have to make a decision in those disappointing moments. Are we going to focus on that, or are we going to focus on God? Our faith, you all, shines brightest in the darkest of moments. And there are times where either my feelings are going to lead me or my faith is going to lead me. My knowledge of who God is and what He's capable of doing. And if we just push it, just if we just push the cart a little bit further down the road, sometimes my disappointment comes from my frustration um, with God. Even when the three Hebrew boys said, even if He doesn't, I know that He can. And they came at the fiery furnace with, you know, ropes singed off of them. They didn't smell like smoke, but they were delivered. Jesus hopped in the furnace with them, and everybody saw it, and it was a miraculous, great time. Daniel was delivered from the lion's den. The disciples saw Jesus calm the storm. The one of the things that we're challenged with as believers is that we know that God is able, but what about when he doesn't? What about when he doesn't move the way that we want him to move? How do we handle that disappointment? How do we handle the frustration of feeling like there are certain things, God, I shouldn't have to go through, I shouldn't have to deal with? How do we deal with heartbreak, heartache? How do we deal with unmet needs? How do we deal with no's from heaven? How do we deal with a job that, uh, quite frankly, I feel like I'm better than or deserve more? I'm not being appreciated effectively in the things that I do. There are so many ways that disappointment can show up in our lives, even in the church, in ministry. And unfortunately, what happens is that oftentimes we, as preachers and church and ministry and believers, we sell the idea of God as if he's obligated to fix everything when and how we want him to. Because we know he's capable, we know he's able, but it always necessarily mean that he's going to move the way that we want him to move. And there are some thorns that he leaves in. There are some limps like he gave to Jacob that he gives us that causes us pain, and we have to suffer with it. There are some situations like Job where we have to go through. Like when Paul prayed for the thorn to be removed and it wasn't. And when John was on the island of Patmos, when he was exiled and he wrote the book of Revelation, that oftentimes you all are disappointing moments can produce great fruit if we allow it to, if we focus on God, if we channel that the right way, if we allow our faith to lead us. And our faith is rooted in our knowledge of who God is and not necessarily our circumstances and our situation. And so we have to make a decision at times, like the psalmist that we talked about in Psalm 73. He had to make a decision. Um, am I going to focus on God, or am I going to focus on the wicked in my situation? And truth be told, it's challenging because we all have things that we struggle with. That's right, my grace is sufficient. We all have things that we struggle with, disappointment that we have to deal with and endure, heartache and letdown. And we have shattered dreams, whether it's a dream for your child, or how you thought you're going to live the rest of your life, on your, we have it everywhere. But am I going to get stuck in that? And that disappointment can turn into bitterness, where we're cynical about everything. Because we're disappointed in one area, it affects everything else. That disappointment can turn into defeat, that we become defeated and we have a defeated mentality and say, well, since this situation didn't work out the way that I wanted it to, no situation is going to work out the way that I feel it should. So I'm just going to give up, throw my hands up and throw in the towel and say, I quit. Whatever it is, you all, we can't allow disappointment to get the best of us. And so we have to figure out a way to allow ourselves to focus back on God. We have to figure out a way to pick ourselves back up. And then we really, when we say that, we know we're speaking metaphorically because it's really the God that is in us, because it's in Him that we live, move, and have our being. That I have to be willing to fellowship with God, to worship God, to focus on God, to let my faith lead me, even at times when I feel like I'm at odds with God, when I'm wrestling with those, when I'm wrestling with a situation that I don't feel I should be in. And to be honest with y'all, when we're wrestling with the consequences of our own decisions and choices, things that we chose, things that we did, even when others warned us not to, we did them anyway. And now that we're reaping that harvest, there's a certain amount of disappointment um, in ourselves. And so wherever we find ourselves landing, wherever you, whatever it is, we have to just make the decision in our hearts and our minds that we're not going to stay stuck in that moment, that we're going to move past that. And this one things, that Jennifer and I, we talk about a lot of times. Certain times, certain situations may not ever get better. And if I'm waiting on my situation to get better to praise and to worship and to devote myself to Him, I'm going to miss a lot of good opportunity to experience God. Sometimes, you all, we have to praise, worship, serve, love God in the midst of our disappointment. And while doing it in the midst of our disappointment, and not doing it with like a sour, bad, cynical attitude. Sometimes we just need to get to the point of worship and praise where we worship and praise Him enough. So even though He doesn't might not change our surroundings, He changes what's on the inside of us. Sometimes we pray for God to change our situation, but God is not concerned about changing our situation. Sometimes God is concerned about changing self, us, you and I, His child, the believer, the Christian, the one who is supposed to bear His image. He's concerned about changing us, transforming us, renewing us, strengthening us, galvanizing our character. And so, some things, you all, one thing that I would encourage us to realize that some burdens, some disappointments, the Lord is trusting us with. He's trusting us because He knows that He can get the glory out of us even in the midst of. And that's one of the things when you read through the Psalms, one of the things I love about the Psalms is that they do not ignore the problem. They do not ignore the problem. They don't overlook it. They don't make light of it. They don't act like it doesn't exist. They acknowledge fully when you read through the Psalms, whether it's an enemy, whether it's a disappointment, whether it's some sort of injustice, injustice, whatever it is. There is an acknowledgement of the problem. There is an acknowledgement of the challenge. There's acknowledgement of whatever this is causing us disappointment, discomfort, that's causing us to feel rejected. There is acknowledgement of what we've done wrong. There's acknowledgement of it. But the Psalms always turns it back around by the end of it, and they focus on God. And what I love about the psalmist is that they would turn their attention back to God, end it on a note of praise, even though their situation has not changed. And so I've got to ask myself, can I turn my attention to God? Can I end it on a note of praise, even though they still acting the way they acting? I still got to go to this job. People still tripping. My doctor still did not give me the news that I wanted to receive. Is my disappointment going to stop me from praising my God? And hopefully, you all, as we mature, as we grow, we realize that we can't allow that to happen. And we allow our praise, our faith to lead us, not our situations. Because our situations will come and go. They will get progressively worse and sometimes better. It's going to be a whole lot of hills and valleys. But in the midst of it all, our faith should remain constant. We should keep our trust in Him. And so, with that being said, you all, I want us to we want to pray, and then for those who are wrestling with disappointment, I want to pray specifically for you because I believe that God has enough grace. God has a certain touch and blessing that will allow us to see Him in the midst of. And what I don't want us to miss out on God or miss His hand because things are not the way that we want them or desire them to be. And so, with that being said, let us pray. Father, we come to you this morning, Lord, first of all, to say thank you. Thank you for being our God. And thank you for the fact that we are your people. We're grateful for your love, your care, and your provision for all of us. And Father, we come to you this morning, dear Lord, asking that you would um, have mercy on us. I'm asking, dear Lord, that you would strengthen us. And Father, I pray for those who are truly wrestling with disappointment, dear Lord. Father, they're not envious. They're not necessarily jealous. They're not evil or ill intended. But, dear Lord, as they're looking at their situation, as they're looking at their life, dear Lord, there is a dissatisfaction. And sometimes it's a holy dissatisfaction. And sometimes it's a hurtful dissatisfaction. That, dear Lord, that there were things that they were hoping for. And Lord, sometimes it's not unreasonable. It's not always about houses and clothes and cars and money and promotions and commodities and status and wealth and all these other things that people chase after and stature and status where people want to accumulate stuff. Lord, sometimes it's not those things. Lord, sometimes it's a health condition. Sometimes it's a broken relationship. Sometimes it's the death of a loved one. Sometimes, dear Lord, it's I'm feeling stuck because of being treated unfairly. Whatever it is, dear Lord, Father, I ask that you would watch. I ask that you would hold them. I ask that you would comfort them. Father, for those who have, um, they feel pain down in their souls, dear Lord Jesus. Father, comfort and keep. Father, as we read your word, we read that you are a God of compassion. That when you saw the people following after you, dear Lord, you looked at them as sheep without a shepherd, and that you had compassion on them, and that you met the need, dear Lord, and that you satisfied the longing in the soul. And for every healing that you did, dear Lord, it signified, it was meant to teach us something about the effects of sin on our life and how you are truly our healer and our redeemer. And Lord, we are fallen people and we're dealing with other fallen people. In the words of Isaiah, Lord, I am a man of unclean lips. And we live in the midst of people who have unclean lips. Lord, we ask that you would touch. Lord, I ask that you would move. I ask that you would so overwhelm us with your presence and your power that there's no denying who our God is, that our God is strong, our God is mighty, our God sits sovereignly in heaven, and you're able. And Father, I pray that we don't waste this season of our life complaining and whining and bickering and crying and pining over what could have been and what should have been and what we had hoped for and how you have rearranged our plans. But dear Lord, I pray that we will spend this season of our life, dear Lord, seeing you fresh, seeing you new, dear Lord, being light in the darkness, dear Lord. Father, being that you would be glorified through our actions. And so, Father, I pray for supernatural strength. I pray for strength for the individual, dear Lord, who is wrestling with the no. For the individual, dear Lord, who is wrestling with their tears and their hurt and their pain. Father, I pray that you would comfort them. And Lord, I believe that you see each and every one of us. I believe that you understand what we're going through. You are our great high priest. And you told us in your word that we can come to you to find the grace to help in our time of need. But Father, there are some people who are in need. Lord, there are some people who need a sovereign touch. There are some people who need your compassion. There are some people who need your strength in this moment to be made perfect in their weakness. There are some people that need to see your hand move in a way that they've never seen it before. And so, Father, I pray that you will lift up bowed down heads. I pray that, like the psalmist, Lord, that we will lift up our heads, O ye gates, and be ye lifted up the everlasting doors, and the King of glory shall come in. Father, I pray that you would enter our situation. I pray that you would enter our lives. Father, I pray that our worship and our praise would usher you in. I pray that our faith would be unyielding and undying, that even in the midst of my disappointment, in the midst of rejection, in the midst of loneliness, in the midst of heartache, in the midst of unemployment, in the midst of divorce, in the midst of a bad doctor, Lord, whatever it is that I'm going through, dear Lord, whatever it is, Father, I pray that we will find it in us to lift up our hands in praise and trust in the sovereign God, knowing that no one has dethroned you, that heaven is not vacant, that you are not caught off guard, but that you sovereignly rule and you understand. And Father, that we can truly have the praise of the three Hebrew boys, that even if you don't deliver, even if you don't restore, even if you don't do it the way that we need you to do it, even if the miracle doesn't come, if I've got to ride out the storm, if the mountain does not move, if my enemies keep forming weapons, if I keep getting hit by the fiery darts, if I have to go through the valley, if I have to wander in the wilderness, if I have to suffer loss right now, even in the midst of all of these things, dear Lord, we trust in you. Father, we believe in you. But there are times, dear Lord, where our pain is so heavy and our grief is so strong, dear Lord, that we don't have the words to say. That, Father, all we have are groanings. All we have are tears. All we have is fear and pain. Father, in those moments, we need you the most. Father, in those moments, we need you to strengthen us. In those moments, we need you to hold us. Father, I pray that we will find the strength that we did not know we had, because it is alien and foreign, dear Lord. It's supernatural in nature. It's not something that is developed merely by what goes on in our brain or in our biological systems, dear Lord, but it comes solely and purely from you. Father, envelop us from on high. Strengthen us for this journey. Lord, give us joy in the midst of. Give us peace in the midst of. Comfort us in the midst of. And Father, I pray that our faith overrides our feelings. Lord, you told Paul that your strength is made perfect in our weakness. Father, for those who are in their weakness right now, overpower them, overshadow them, see them. Let them know that they're loved even though they feel unloved by others. Let them know, dear Lord, that you still have a plan and a purpose for their lives. We love you. We praise you. We thank you and we glorify you. It's in your blessed Son, Jesus' name we pray. Amen, amen, and amen. We serve a God that is more than able to do anything but fail. And so, as you are living your life, and as we are wrestling with disappointment, as we are wrestling with tears, as we're wrestling with all of these things, and especially on the backdrop of the prosperity of people who don't serve, don't love, don't praise, don't pray, have nothing of God in their mind. As we are wrestling through these things, do not allow we want to be careful not to allow our situations to get the best of us, that they rob us of our opportunity to praise a God that is so praiseworthy and so deserving.